Muscle testing, or kinesiology, can enable us to achieve life-transforming results for our health and well-being. But it's not always quite so successful, leaving us wondering why. For example, try using it to work out which playing card has been laid down, or which cards your opponent has in a game, or even to predict the lottery results. It's probably not going to work. So why the discrepancy, and what can we safely rely on muscle testing for? Let's find out. First, let's look at some factors that can inhibit muscle testing. Starting with the basics, we'll need to be sure we're in a reasonable condition, not acutely emotionally triggered or full of judgments or exhausted. If this is the case, it might be better to wait until we're feeling better. We'll need to be well hydrated as well, free from any imbalances of our own that might be undermining our muscle testing ability, and as explained in an earlier video, to have made a strong connection and set a firm intention for the work. We need to be free of excessive doubt too. If I believe I can't muscle test, or I'm not good at it, or it will never work for me as well as it does for others, this is self-fulfilling. Everyone knows Henry Ford's famous statement, whether you believe you can or you can't, you're right. There's no need to invest our self-worth in our muscle testing ability. That just puts incapacitating pressure on us and promotes failure. People who can't muscle test have just as much inherent worth as those who can. And if we're not believing that for ourselves, how can we believe it for those we're working with? If you're having a problem with this idea, working on it with another practitioner for a while can really help to unblock things. Clearly, predicting the future is another thing that muscle testing can't help us with. That's one of the reasons why we can't use it to win the lottery. Unless you believe in an ultra-deterministic universe, the future is not yet fixed and not yet testable. And for similar reasons, it's also not effective for making life choices either, like whether I should take a job or move to another town. Much more than some of our other means of perception, muscle testing is an abstraction, and the information we get from it is very limited in its richness and context. It gives us information in binary form without the nuances necessary to evaluate and make choices. So any answers that we get are likely to reflect our current preconceptions. It's immensely valuable, but it has its place. We have other machinery for making such choices. We have our heart backed up with our head. Introspection and meditation or prayer are much better guides in this area. One big thing that could really sabotage our muscle testing ability is if we're invested in a particular image of ourselves or a general belief system. Food is a good example of this. If we're checking what sort of diet would be beneficial to someone, but we ourselves adhere to, say, a ketogenic diet, then we're not likely to find that grains or sweet fruit are what they need. If we're vegan, we're not going to find that yogurt is good for someone, and if we feel we really need our meat, we're not going to find that someone else should avoid it. A good example of this principle is when I started releasing trapped emotions from myself. It was many weeks before I found a single trapped emotion of hatred, dating from any time in my life. It's not that it wasn't there, it's just that I'd developed an image of myself as somebody who wasn't capable of hatred, and I was invested in this image to the extent that it would have been deeply uncomfortable to face the fact that I'd experienced it, even in the past, so I subconsciously didn't allow myself to find what I needed to find. In a similar vein, our preconceptions and expectations of what will come up can cloud the accuracy of our results. If I'm working on myself or someone I know well, and I think I know what's behind the issue, then that's probably what I'm likely to find. The expectation blocks my openness to what's really behind what's going on. If I suspect that a trapped emotion of shame is nearly always at the heart of a particular issue, then that's what I'm likely to find. If I believe a heart wall consists of thousands of emotions, I'll keep finding unfeasibly large heart walls. If I don't believe in entities, I'll rarely find any. But if I've come to think that everybody is riddled with entities, and this is at the root of all their issues, then I'm going to find them in huge quantities of all sorts and types, and I'm likely to become quite expert in categorizing them and explaining them. Our expectations shape our findings, whether they're correct or not. And the best thing that we can do is to divest ourselves of these expectations. This is something that will make our muscle testing much more reliable. Body Code creator Dr. Bradley Nelson has shared that his wife once had a dream about a little girl who was waiting to be born to her. Soon after that, she became pregnant, and they decided to use muscle testing to see whether the dream was true, and it was a girl. They both tested consistently that it was, but when the baby came to be born, it was actually a boy. They'd both been inspired by the dream and expected it to be true and wanted it to be true, and this had affected their muscle testing. In the whole section on impediments to muscle testing, we didn't touch on why we might find it difficult to reliably identify an overturned playing card. It's not in the future, and we're not likely to be bogged down in expectations or preferences about it. So what's going on with this? In an effort to disprove the basis of energy medicine, a well-known British skeptic assembled a group of dowsers and challenged them to locate something he'd buried. None of them found the right location. The interesting thing was that the dowsers themselves were shocked and confused by their failure. Of course, the skeptic took this as evidence that dowsing is useless and the dowsers were all deluding themselves about their abilities. As soon as they were subjected to any sort of objective test, they failed. But this ignores the fact that many of them earned a living from using their abilities effectively and successfully in their daily lives with their clients, which wouldn't have been possible if they didn't see positive results. Could it possibly be that the fact of testing itself affected the outcome? It sounds far-fetched, but it isn't. In a famous experiment from the birth of quantum physics, scientists found, to their astonishment, that light behaved differently depending on whether it was being observed or not, which became known as the observer effect. Anything based at the subtle energetic level is subject to this principle, and with muscle testing, this includes subjecting the process to a test or a challenge, even if it's only we ourselves who are the observers. In this case, the intention of the experiment was actually to disprove muscle testing, which could only have contributed further to the result. It's true, of course, that without independent objective verification, we can't be totally sure that all of the information we get from muscle testing is factually accurate. If we identify a trapped emotion, for example, but the client doesn't remember it happening, or if we identify a misaligned vertebra and the client has never felt any issue there, we can think that we've probably identified the right thing, but we can't be totally sure that it's the exact correct one. But that's not the purpose of muscle testing. It's not there to satisfy our intellectual curiosity about what the mechanics of an ailment are. It exists as a practical tool for our healing and other positive activities, and it's the intention and the feeling behind its use that makes it effective. So many people, including me, have had their lives utterly transformed through energy healing using muscle testing, and many of us have gone on to heal others. But it doesn't work through demonstrable accuracy of the results. In fact, two practitioners might have completely different readings of what's going on for somebody, but be equally effective in their results. That's because none of us is a completely clear channel, and we each receive the information that we get through our own individual filter, as if we were wearing tinted glasses or using a particular camera setting. It affects the flavour of what we see. That's just how the process works. Much more important than accuracy of information is our intention for the work and the establishment of a strong feeling of love for the person we're working on, whether that's ourselves or somebody else. This is the real power engine propelling the work, and with this we can overcome many of our own obstacles as well as achieving accuracy when that's important. So long as we avoid the impediments mentioned earlier and set a clear, loving intention for the results that we want, then we can rely on muscle testing to bring about a fundamental change in our own and others' health. I see it as a means to direct us to what the body really needs in order to heal, so that we can then provide it and bring about the transformative change that we're interested in. It has many uses in other fields too. Heartful Healing uses the body code to help clients all over the world feel their best and live to their true potential. If you'd like to experience healing with me, please visit heartfulhealing.co.uk to find out more and book.
I came with a very long history of neck and back pain that has given me problematic pain and discomfort the majority of my life. In my neck it was about a 7.
And what happened during the session?
The pain began to diminish quite rapidly, and then suddenly it's gone to virtually a 1. So for a skeptic like me, I was quite transformed.